Miranda Materi.
And I'm Shannon Scalbo, and we are Hand Therapy Academy.
All right, guys, welcome back. We have Shannon on again today, and she is going to be asking me some questions. So why don't you go ahead and get started with the first one?
Okay, my first question is, what's the worst patient case that you've ever had?
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about the worst patient case, I think there's like the level of injury, right? Like how bad and how severe is the injury, but then also the other dynamics that go into the patient therapist, relationship and things like that. So, is the patient or their unique circumstances, I should say. So, I think I've had a lot of people that have had very severe injuries. And so that's not what makes them difficult, though. I think what makes them difficult is the unique patient circumstances. So I had one gentleman in particular that had just graduated. Had just graduated high school. He had moved out to Arizona. He didn't have any family support whatsoever. And he had cut his hand pretty severely, like he got some digital nerves and a tendon. And during our therapeutic, or when he was in therapy, he ended up becoming homeless. And then also he ended up having some other issues that where he was like hearing voices and stuff when he would come into the clinic. And I think that was why it was so challenging, was all those other aspects. And then not just like thinking about him as his hand injury, but as a whole person, and how to get him the resources he needed with no family support around. So that was really difficult and challenging, and really hard to see him go through, because he was such a great fun, like he was a fun patient. He just was going through so much, and he was so young. So it was like having to figure out, can I call his mom, because he's an adult, like all of those things. And then getting him admitted to an inpatient psych, and having them come when he was in, I don't know, it was very sad. So that's probably not what you're asking me with. So let me go to more of more you want a therapeutic case.
No, that's fine. I feel like whatever comes to mind, as like, I don't know, just as like preparation of like what I could like one day maybe run into, right? And that is one of them, is just like there are going to be situations that you are going to have to try and field, right?
Yeah, that keep you up. I've had, someone where they told me they were being abused by their father. That was another one. There's all those cases, I think, that make it way more harder than our daily treatment. So, or just the black and white of hand therapy, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So let me talk about a case that I thought was extremely difficult. And it was a patient that got his hand stuck in the sink disposal.
Garbage disposal.
The garbage disposal. So he somehow turned the switch on when his hand was down in there, and it absolutely chewed up his hand. Like, he had several digits amputated. And then he had to get a flap put on to cover all the skin he lost. And so that was a challenging one as well.
Yeah. Those are the kinds of cases, right? Those are the kinds of things that I just haven't, like, when you haven't had a time, you just haven't, like, I don't know. I've seen a lot of, I think, more PG things.
Yeah. So I would think, when you do see those patients, I'll try to be more helpful. When you do see those patients, I like to make a list of all their problems. And I make the list of problems from an orthopedic standpoint, okay, tendon injury, nerve injury, artery injury. I make them and I list them kind of in a hierarchy. So I know what I need to protect first, and what's going to be okay. And make my timelines based on those things. And then I make a timeline based on what the patient thinks his or her, their worst deficits are. So that way I'm addressing it objectively from that healing standpoint. And then I'm also addressing it from the patient standpoint as well. So I think that's a powerful tool as a new grad when you're going through stuff, and when you're going through more complicated cases. Otherwise you can get lost in the weeds of trying to address everything in one session, right? So I think I'm just going to address as much as I can in the time we have, and then I'm going to keep chipping away at that list.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you're going to get it all done in that first session. Mm-hmm. Same with evaluations, right? How do you measure all those when they have multiple joints and multiple problems? How do you do that all in one eval?
Definitely.
You don't.
I know I've gotten lost in the sauce a few times from the stiff shoulders, stiff this, stiff that.
Yeah.
It's like,
So
oh, what do
what,
I do?
I guess let me turn it back to you. What have you done that has helped you as a new grad?
In terms of prioritize, well, I feel like
Like in managing that.
yeah, well, I feel like because I work with all of the people you mentored, that I do exactly that. They have all taught me, right, with like our EDS patients, or where there's just like seems like you could do anything and everything to help, is to make a priority list, and try and get like your top 3 things done in that eval, and then it's like you will always have more time later, and like trying to, I think what ends up happening is I feel a lot of pressure in the moment, and because of that I'm not as efficient, because I, like, a lot of the times you're having to redirect the conversation, and I think the more pressure you feel, it's harder to like keep what you want to do on track. So I think kind of in just mindset, like letting that pressure go kind of also helps me prioritize a bit too. Is like, it's okay. Like you're going to do something to help, and you're going to get things done. And just really all that matters is that you're trying to be a good therapist at the end of the day. Right.
Right. So I think too, in those cases where you're talking about redirecting, or, sometimes patients have a lot to share, or maybe they're even hyperverbal for various reasons. And then how do you handle those patients?
The hyperverbal.
Yeah. Like, what do you do?
Um,
The chatty Cathy's, like you're trying to get all this subjective information. What do you do?
Right. I feel like I for some reason I just feel like I'm good at redirecting. I don't know like what I can pinpoint there, but like, okay, like can we save that for later, and like can I get through these questions real quick, like without it being rude, but just like here's my time constraints, here's what I want to do today, like kind of like tell them my goals for this, and then kind of maybe that helps them like say only what they need to say, but sometimes that doesn't help either, right? And then you're just kind of redirecting the whole time. I don't know. But
I know,
I feel like that's what I kind of do.
I feel like that's a hard one for new grads to get, is getting the balance between being a good listener and really hearing it, but also getting the information that you need to get in that evaluation. So I think, you did probably exactly what I did. Be like, hey, would you mind if we save that for the very end? And then I'll even say, hey, I have 5 minutes left with you. Can you tell me all your questions? And then, if you think of questions when you're not with me, go ahead and write them down, and we'll address them at your next session as well.
Right. Like, or even like before, I think like sometimes a redirecting statement can feel a little harsh when you're like saying things that maybe are vulnerable, or even a story about yourself, right? I think usually I'll try and comment on whatever they're saying, like either make a joke about it, or like if a joke's appropriate, or like some kind of reassuring, a normal comment, and then add the redirecting where it's like, I am hearing you, and also I need to get this done.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Great advice. But sometimes you just can't get through it either.
But sometimes it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Sometimes I'm hyperverbal.
Too much coffee yes. For sure. Yeah.
Overcaffeinated.
Yeah. And I think too, reassuring patients at that first visit too, because I'm like, hey, today I'm going to be doing a lot of measurements and a lot of assessing, and we may not have time to get through all of the stuff that I want to get through with exercises, right? Because patients come and they want exercises. Mm-hmm. So I always try to make sure I have time to give them one piece of homework to do at home. But sometimes, that doesn't always happen.
Right.
Because you can't give them the homework until you fully assessed them, right?
Right.
Because you don't know what's going to be safe or what's not going to be safe. So.
Right.
Okay, Shannon. Well, thanks for coming on. And it was great having you today. And we're looking forward to having you back again. If you want more information, check us out, info@Hand Therapy Academy. Or you can also see our Instagram at Hand Therapy Academy.